Recording in progress.
That's a good thing. Good afternoon, honorable members. Let's observe a moment for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. Please be seated. The Secretary will read the order.
Debate on vote number 42, Land Reform and Rural Development Appropriation Bill.
To introduce the budget, I recognize the Honourable the Minister of Land Reform and Rural Development.
House Chairperson, House Chairperson, Deputy Minister, Honorable Matabata, Honorable Members, my Chief Whip Ghana, Chairperson and members of the Portfolio Committee on Land Reform and Rural Development, government officials, I greet you. It is a distinct honor to present Budget Vote 42 of the Department of Land Reform and Rural Development for the 2026-2027 financial year. We are presenting this budget vote at a time when the aspirations and hopes of the majority of our people in these two broad areas have been heightened as the result of a range of commitments that we continue to make, as well as several positive impacts that are being realized at the level of implementation. In this address, we thus focus not only on the financial resource part of our work, but also on what we are doing in the sphere of developing the necessary policy and legislative frameworks. The work of the department remains directed towards advancing the constitutional and legislative mandates entrusted to it on equitable access to land, restitution of land rights, ensuring tenure security, supporting sustainable rural livelihoods, and promoting rural prosperity, modernizing land administration systems, and improving spatial governance across all spheres of government. These responsibilities remain central to addressing the historical legacies of dispossession, poverty, inequality, exclusion, underdevelopment, and uneven spatial development. It is a generally accepted fact that land reform requires coordinated implementation across government. In this regard, as it discharges its mandate, our department continues to work with the Interministerial Committee on Land Reform and Agriculture, which is chaired by the Deputy President. This institutional mechanism assists in improving coordination across departments, reducing duplication, strengthening implementation oversight, and supporting integrated planning in relation to land reform and agricultural development. During the reporting period, the department acquired approximately 53,000 hectares of land and allocated more than 35,000 hectares to qualifying individuals and communities. In line with the Cabinet-approved beneficiary selection and land allocation policy, approximately 20,000 hectares of land were allocated to women and 13,000 hectares to youth beneficiaries. While this is a positive development, we recognize the need to improve further in this regard. And the department will thus continue to prioritize equitable access to land for women, youth, persons with disability, and other qualifying beneficiaries. In our pursuit of strengthening tenure security, approximately 7,000 hectares were acquired and transferred to more than 700 farm dwellers and labor tenants. With the support of the Special Master on Labor Tenants, 61 labor tenants matters were finalized, while 313 matters were referred to court when negotiations with landowners could not be concluded successfully. Additionally, approximately 206,000 hectares of land were transferred from the state to affected communities through the implementation of the Transformation of Certain Rural Areas Act, 1994, Act 94 of 1998. At these strategic policy and legislative levels, we have identified the need to conduct a comprehensive land audit, to amend the beneficiary selection and allocation policy for beneficiaries of the proactive land acquisition strategy, and to develop the necessary policies and legislation to give effect to the constitutional mandates on equitable access to land. Communal land tenure and administration, rural development and land administration. We have also identified the rationalization of apartheid laws as a long-standing factor that continues to complicate the work of the department in discharging its land reform mandate, as many such laws that still exist on the statute book are in direct conflict with the Constitution. This work is to be conducted under the auspices of a retired judge whose appointment process is underway. As an essential instrument for planning purposes, one of the key objectives of the comprehensive land audit is to resolve the ongoing lack of clarity and disputes around the amount of land that is in the possession of the state. This also applies to communal land, especially with regard to the question of how much movement has occurred in shifting from the 13% that was originally accessible to Africans during the apartheid period, including land that has changed hands through market mechanisms. Most importantly, the comprehensive land audit will also bring certainty about who owns what land in South Africa in terms of race, gender, business entity, land held in trusts, regional distribution, as well as nationality. With regard to ensuring equitable access to land, we have reviewed and amended the existing beneficiary selection and allocation policy in such a way as to ensure that it provides adequately for those who lack the financial and educational requirements that were previously insisted upon. Yet such individuals consistently and without fail demonstrate the potential to operate successfully as farmers while working under severely constrained conditions of land shortage and infrastructure deficits in communal areas. Similarly, we have strengthened the provisions that relate to military veterans and former political prisoners. The Equitable Access to Land Bill, which is aimed at giving effect to the provisions of Section 25(5) of the Constitution, will serve as the centerpiece of the implementation of the redistribution program. In this regard, we have made provisions for the establishment of a land reform agency as a cutting-edge service delivery institution whose responsibility will focus on land and beneficiary identification, allocation, and post-settlement support. This bill, which we have reported on during previous occasions, is at the stage where it is being prepared to be presented to Cabinet and thereafter for public consultation by June this year. The process of developing the Communal Land Tenure and Administration Bill, which is aimed at giving effect to the provisions of Section 25, subsection 6 of the Constitution, is also on course to be presented to Cabinet and to be taken through the public consultation process by the end of June this year. This bill seeks to address not only the constitutionally mandated function of ensuring legally secure tenure for the millions of residents of the former homelands and other communal areas. It also seeks to introduce a sustainable, democratic, gender and youth empowering system of communal land administration in which communities and traditional leaders will work together in a mutually supportive manner. The department is working according to a timeline that will result in both bills being taken through the necessary parliamentary processes by the middle of next year. The process of resolving the current impasse around the Ingonyama Trust Board, which the media has reported upon substantially, is being expedited. Similarly, we welcome the letter from the Speaker of the House urging us to address concerns raised by the traditional leaders and the Ingonyama Trust. House Chairperson, the governance and functionality of communal property associations remains a significant area of departmental concern and focus because of the continuing challenges that are facing many of these institutions. The instability also assumes the form of serious tensions between communities and traditional leaders, which is a phenomenon that we are committed to address through effective governance systems and sustainable institutional arrangements. The Communal Land Tenure Administration Bill will also go a long way towards achieving this objective. The department had planned to train 790 CPA executive members during the reporting period and exceeded this target by training 821 executives in governance, financial management, land administration, and institutional management related matters. Ministerial CPA roadshows were conducted across all 9 provinces and involved engagement with 507 CPAs and approximately 2,465 members. This engagement consistently raised concerns relating to governance instability, internal disputes, business unsustainability, inadequate or no post-settlement support, lack of proper accountability systems, and, as already mentioned, poor relationship between CPAs and traditional institutions. Also, as indicated on previous occasions, we remain committed to holding a national CPA in Daba during the course of this year. The work that we have been doing on CPAs is closely linked to efforts that we have made during the reporting period with regard to transferring land and issuing title deeds to communities in many parts of the country. Over the medium term, the department's budget amounts to approximately 32.1 billion, with an allocation of 10.336 billion for the 2026-2027 financial year. The department has budgeted 630 million for the 2026 financial year for the acquisition and allocation of approximately 57,751 hectares of land for the redistribution and tenure-related purposes. The department will further support 60 farms through the land development support programs, while continuing to strengthen production support and rural infrastructure interventions. An amount of approximately 388 million has been allocated for infrastructure and production support linked to these interventions. Chairperson, the restitution program remains central to addressing land dispossession arising from racially discriminatory laws and practices that were implemented after 19 June 1913. As at 31 December 2025, a total of 83,721 land claims had been settled through the program. These settlements benefited approximately 2,396,613 individual beneficiaries and 468,761 households. Of these, 181,411 were female-headed and 1,291 were households headed by persons living with disabilities. In its totality, since its inception in 1995, the restitution program has seen the restoration of approximately 3,916,733 hectares of land to beneficiaries at the cost of approximately 27 billion. In addition, approximately 27.6 billion has been paid as financial compensation to qualifying financial beneficiaries, while approximately 5.5 billion has been allocated in the form of development grants in terms of Section 42C of the Restitution of Land Rights Act 22 of 1994, as amended. For the 2026 financial year, the Commission on Restitution of Land Rights plans to settle 307 claims and finalize 284. The number of outstanding old order claims or land claims currently stands at 5,245. It is important to also mention that the ministry has now begun the process of working towards complying with the court injunctions relating to new order land claims, those that were lodged when the window for lodgement was reopened between 2014 and 2016. This will entail working with department, draft and introduce legislation to this Honorable House so that we open 2014 new order claims. The Commission has been allocated approximately 3.839 billion for the current financial year. This allocation supports compensation of employees, operational requirements, transfers of households, and capital expenditure necessary for restitution implementation. The Deputy Minister, Comrade Stan Matabata, will provide a more expansive input on the rural development functional area, covering the various relevant policies, plans, and programs. Suffice it for me to say that this area is critical to addressing the long-standing phenomenon of rural underdevelopment and the need to transform households and communities in these areas to a level of vibrancy, sustainability, and prosperity. House Chair, the land administration function is central to property rights, investment certainty, land development, and integrated public administration. As one of those key functions in this area, deeds registration continues to provide legal certainty in relation to registered rights in land and property, and it supports housing delivery, municipal administration, infrastructure investment, and broader economic activity. During 2026-2027 financial year, the department will continue advancing the implementation of electronic deeds registry system as part of broader
Honourable
efforts to
Minister.
modernize land registration systems.
Honourable Minister, the 15 minutes you asked for at the beginning has expired. You have 5 minutes towards the end, but if you continue now, obviously the 5 minutes will shrink.
You promised me 20 minutes.
Yes, 15 plus 5 is 20.
The National Geomatics Management System function remains essential to land administration, infrastructure development, geospatial coordination, investment certainty, and spatial planning. The department will thus continue to strengthen cadastral survey processing and maintaining the integrity of land parcels information required for orderly development and secure property registration. A significant development which also underscores our country's growing international footprint is that on the 28th International Federation of Surveyors Congress 2026 and General Assemblies to be held in Cape Town from 24 to 29 May 2026. This is the largest such event in the world, which attracts around 1,200 to 1,500 experts in land surveying, geospatial science, spatial planning, and construction management. Honorable Chair, let me stop here so that in 4 minutes I'm digade ngayo umnqithana noma days. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. For party reactions, I firstly recognize the Honourable Mgaga.
Honorable House Chairperson, the Minister and the Deputy Ministers here present, honorable members, the officials as led by the Director General of the Department. I rise today on behalf of the African National Congress to articulate our support for a transformative vision for our rural heartland. A vision where spatial justice, technological innovation, and infrastructural development converge to dismantle the long, outstanding, and enduring legacy of colonialism and apartheid. The ANC remains unyielding in its commitment to rural transformation. We refuse to treat rural development as an isolated policy block. Instead, we declare it the foundational catalyst of our nationwide economic growth. Through aggressive execution of the infrastructure development in rural areas policy and our integrated rural development sector strategy, we are matching land restoration with intensive post-settlement support. To contribute to inclusive economic growth and job creation, government must expand our agro-industrial base by establishing processing plants and cold storage facilities right where the land is being restored. To make this sustainable, the Commission must continue to develop tailored settlement models. These models must endure must ensure that land transferred to beneficiaries is utilized productively. This would empower communities to supply local markets, employ local workers, and broaden the national economy. According to the estimates of national expenditure, the department plans to complete 99 infrastructure projects over the medium term at an estimated cost of 1.6 billion in the Rural Infrastructural Development sub-program in the Rural Development Program. Planned projects over the period ahead include 15 animal and field projects, 9 irrigation schemes, 15 agri-packs, and 60 socio-economic infrastructure, that is access to road and bridges. These are expected to improve quality of life by facilitating ease of doing business and enhancing access to villages and farms, thereby expanding socio-economic opportunities. Honorable members, we recognize that a modern economy requires modern fundamentals. The ANC places primacy on active rollout of basic rural infrastructure by building roads, securing bulk water access, and establishing reliable energy connections. These investments ensure mobility, ignite economic opportunities, and drastically elevate the daily standard of living of our people. Good plans require sustainable institutional and funding framework. In line with the National Development Plan, medium-term development policy, particularly the focus on inclusive growth, it is critical to expedite the implementation of the district development model to coordinate public and private capital. Honorable members, an agrarian transformation cannot succeed in the dark. We have a duty to upscale collaboration with the tech industry and state agencies to aggressively roll out inhuman and communication technology across rural communities. By establishing digital hubs, bringing technology directly into the rural economy, government would be providing sustainable entrepreneurial opportunities. The primary target must be the youth, ensuring that a young person in a communal property institution has the exact same digital access and economic runaway as a young person in the middle of Sandton. Now, House Chairperson, I must address the persistent noise that normally continue up there from the opposition benches. They stand before this House in many instances with opportunistic critiques, yet they offer absolutely no viable alternative. They indulge in platitude whilst completely ignoring immense progress achieved. Rural economic stimulus, expanding rural infrastructure projects to generate at least 2,250 direct jobs with vulnerable communities. Let the record show that as of December 2024, our land restitution program has successfully settled 83.348 land claims, restoring nearly 3.9 billion or million hectares of land to our people. This progressive transformation has directly benefited over 2.3 million individual beneficiaries across more than 466,000 households. The opposition wants this country to rely strictly on market mechanism that historically dispossessed the black majority. The ANC does not rely on empty rhetoric or passive market forces. We implement structured, legally compliant, and active funded intervention to restore home dignity. While the opposition complains, the ANC continue to deliver. Speaker, the path to an equal, prosperous South Africa runs directly through the revitalization of our rural heartland. By encouraging infrastructure on land reform, expanding agro-processing, and deploying cutting-edge technology, we are securing our food supply, creating jobs, and building a developmental state. In closing, honorable members, we must be clear, rural development cannot be divorced from the overall development path of this country. There must be no mission drift in terms of rural infrastructure and technological development as a pathway towards inclusive and vibrant economic growth trajectory. Rural development is an integral part of the mandate of this department, and therefore it cannot be outsourced, underfunded, or neglected. On this basis, we must prioritize the processing of the Rural Development Bill to institutionalize economic coordination. On behalf of the African National Congress, we support this budget as allocated. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. I now recognize the Honorable Nkitam.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable members, we only have one department to deal with the land question, and it is this department. And the land question is the beginning of all our troubles. We know that when Jan van Riebeeck arrived here, that's the beginning of all our problems. But this department, if we look in terms of its own plans and its delivery, it is a systematic failure. It is a department which is based on failure. We must remember the 1510 Salt River battle, where the Khoisan defeated the Portuguese. That was the start of the battle for our sovereignty and, of course, the colonization project, which is based on the land question. If we don't address the land question, we cannot address racism. We cannot address spatial apartheid. We can't address food security. The land question is central, and this is the only department that must deal with this issue, and it is failing systematically. We have a minister who is an absentee leader. He seemed to enjoy more the international conference circuits, where he provides all kinds of glowing representation of the South African land reform program. When it is, this department is planning to fail. They are planning to deliver 200,000 hectares by 2030. 200,000 hectares in a country where millions and millions of hectares are in the hands of the settler minority. So there you are. This department is not going to address that matter. It is planning not to address the land question. Similarly with rural development, the GNU has abandoned the land question. Let us look at the allocation, the budget allocation. It is less than 1% of the national budget. I mean, what does that mean? We are not serious about addressing the land question. The GNU has abandoned the land question, and landlessness is going to continue. It is unfortunate that the great party of Robert Sobukwe, the PAC, has been tasked to undermine the project of land return. It is a very evil thing Amavarara have done here, to take the PAC and put in the position where it must manage the failure to address the land question. Now, let us look at some of the key failures. The land restitution program, which of course is based on the false historical event of putting land dispossession to 1913. Itself, it will take more than 100 years to be addressed. We are not even talking about the new order rights, which new order claims, which are claims which must still be dealt with, which are being parked in terms of a court order. We are talking about the old order claims, which themselves are not being resolved. In fact, what the restitution program does is to give money and land to white farmers, because white farmers, when there is a land return, they take the money, and then, of course, when there is the situation of our people accepting money instead of land, the white farmer keeps the land. So literally, this program is about legitimizing land dispossession and buying land for white farmers. So where are black people here? Labor tenants, we as a committee went out to Mpumalanga and we saw ourselves the condition of labor tenants. They are slaves in those farms. White farmers tricked the government in 1996. They proposed a thing called farm equity schemes, and our government accepted it. Today, that scheme has given white farmers 700 million. And as soon as the money comes into their farms, they evict these farm workers who are supposed to be owners. We are dealing with a serious crisis here and failure of a government that's supposed to look after our people. The same with communal property associations. They are failing, and then white farmers come and sometimes they become partners, and the bus remain the bus of the plus. But they say that our people have now received land. Let us turn to the Ngonyama Trust. Minister, we must just do the right thing. Respect the king, give the powers to the king to appoint and dismiss his board at his pleasure, just like the president of the country has the right to appoint and dismiss ministers at his pleasure. Let us give dignity back to the king. It is not up to us commoners to interfere with the land management system, which is communal and is well established. So ndiyacela mu-Afrika, hlonipha inkosi, ukumkani mnike amandla wakhe. Now, there is a solution to this problem. And the MK party is bringing that solution to parliament. You know, look at us, we are all black here, very few settlers. We have a majority in this parliament.
Honourable Member, just hold on for a moment.
Thank you, House
Why do you-
Chair.
yeah,
On a
just
point,
wait to be recognised first. Honourable Member, why do you want to be recognised?
it's on a point of order.
Yes.
The honourable member reflected on members of this House as being settlers, and I want you to rule on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't hear him name specific members. I'll consider the matter, and if it warrants a ruling, I'll come back. Honourable Kitam, please continue.
We are a black majority. This parliament is a black majority. We can get up to 90% of the vote. So the MK party is bringing before you an amendment of Section 25, which is about expropriation of land without compensation. This matter will come before us. Now, as black people, we have the choice to maintain the apartheid racial land ownership structure or to give land to our people. This is an opportunity that we as black people in this parliament must not let go. We must grab it, we must use it, and we must bring honor to honorables. We are landless honorables right now. What is honor about a landless member of parliament? We are landless ourselves, we are representing landless people, but we have the chance to change the situation. Thank you, Chair. We reject this budget vote.
I recognise the Honourable Maseko.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, there is a woman in the rural village who wakes up every morning before sunrise to start working. Her name is Dike Lady. 20 years ago, her family celebrated when government officials arrived at their village and announced that community's land claim has finally been approved. There were speeches, promises, cameras flashing, and leaders speaking about dignity, empowerment, and the new beginning. The community believed that their lives were about to change, but today, Minister, Dikeledi still walks many kilometers to fetch water because the farm has no functioning infrastructure. The irrigation system promised years ago was never installed. The tractors broke down long ago and were never repaired. The training program stopped after a few months. The local access road is full of potholes, making it difficult to transport produce to markets. The land is there, but opportunities are not. Ultimately, Dikele's son had to leave for the city because there were no jobs in their village. Her daughter wanted to start a small farming business, but could not access financial support because she still had to secure the title deed. Minister Dikele and her family's story is not unique. Too many South Africans face decades-long delays in restitution claims, and countless families grow old waiting for justice. In certain instances, emerging farmers do receive land, yes, but they receive little to no support from the government. This is the story of budget spends without visible outcomes. The greatest tragedy is that South Africans have lost confidence in the department's ability to implement land reform effectively. We need to understand that land reform remains one of the most important emotional responsibilities of this government. This is not only about hectares transferred. It is about dignity, but most importantly, it is about the responsibility to carry the hopes of millions who were dispossessed, excluded, and denied economic participation for generations. It is about whether a young person in a rural village can find work close to home, whether emerging farmers can feed this nation, and whether families who waited decades for justice can finally receive secure ownership and opportunities. Minister, Budget Vote 42 speaks to one of the most important mandates in our democracy. Yet year after year, we continue to see a widening gap between promises made and outcomes delivered. The department speaks of transformation, but too many land reform beneficiaries remain unsupported, underfinanced, and abandoned after transfer. Land without infrastructure, financing, mentorship, water rights, market access, and security of tenure does not create empowerment. It just creates frustrations. Millions are spent acquiring land, yet sufficient attention is not given to ensure it becomes productive and sustainable. Too many farms transferred through restitution and redistribution programs collapse. Beneficiaries are left without post-settlement support. That is not empowerment. It is setting people up for a failure. Another major concern is underperformance and under-expenditure. Communities wait years, sometimes generations, for restitution claims to be finalized. For example, the District 6 restitution claims were lodged at the dawn of democracy. Yet, after 5 presidents and more than 7 different ministers, they are still not finalized. Some claimants have passed away before seeing resolution. That is not merely an administrative backlog. It is a failure to agency. We must also address the issue of insecure tenure rights. Millions of South Africans living on communal land still lack legally enforceable ownership or long-term security. Women in rural communities remain particularly vulnerable when tenure systems fail to adequately protect them. Without secure tenure, without secure tenure, there can be no meaningful economic participation, no collateral to finance, and no certainty to future generations. If we are serious about the department's core mandate, then several urgent interventions are required. Firstly, post-settlement support must become the centerpiece of land reform policy. Land reform cannot succeed without partnership between the government, the private sector, agricultural colleges, and the commercial farmers. Secondly, the department must prioritize title deeds and secure tenure rights. Ownership creates confidence, investment, and economic participation. South Africans must not remain perpetual tenants of the state. Thirdly, corruption and wasteful expenditure must be aggressively confronted. Every rand wasted is a betrayal of poor South Africans who depend on the department. Fourthly, rural safety must be incorporated into rural development. Farmers, farm workers, and rural residents cannot produce, invest, or live with dignity amid rising crime and stock theft. Lastly, the department must modernize its systems. Delays in restitution processing, land audits, beneficiary verification, and project approvals continue to undermine delivery. Chairperson, South Africa does not lack land reform policies. What we lack is implementation, accountability, and measurable outcomes. The people of South Africa deserve more than symbolic reform. They deserve real empowerment. They deserve a department that delivers not only land, but opportunity, productivity, and hope. I thank you.
Thank you. Honourable members, before I recognise the next speaker, I've considered the point of order raised Now, firstly, of course, the two rules that may come into play here are Rules 84 and 85. Rule 84 dealing with unparliamentary language or gestures, and Rule 85, the reflection upon the integrity of other members. Now, firstly, if one considers the term settler, I've quickly consulted the dictionary, and the dictionary says a settler is a person who moves to a new, often previously uninhabited or sparsely populated area with the intention of establishing a permanent community or home. That's according to the Cambridge Dictionary. So the word in itself clearly can't be unparliamentary. If one considers the context further, it's clear that no specific member was indicated by the Honourable Nkitam in making the statement he made, and therefore no finding can be made properly that Rule 85 was breached. Having said that, Honourable Nkitam, that it is of course also so that when we refer to other members of the House in general, we must do so mindful of the fact that all of the members here have sworn an oath of allegiance to the Constitution, a Constitution which proclaims that none of us are lesser members. And I would caution using a language in which the context might show that you are of the view that some members are of a lesser standing than others. Let's continue with the debate. The next speaker.
Chair. Point of order.
Yes, Honourable Nana.
I don't contest your ruling, Chair. I fully accept it. But I did keep clock when Honourable Maseko was speaking. She used exactly 5 minutes, and she is now left with 1 minute. Can I be accredited with that 1 minute? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, no, that's a point of let's say household, which you can take up with the table staff, but maybe you must just get new batteries for your clock, because on my clock she had 15 seconds left. Honourable Matthias.
Thank you so much, House Chair. House Chair, the EFF rises to reject this budget yet again because it does not answer, nor attempt to resolve the land question. It does not respond to the historical violence of colonial and apartheid land dispossession. It does not carry the urgency required by millions of black people who remain landless in the land of their birth. It's a budget of delay, a budget of excuses, a budget that protects the status quo. This budget reiterates the Land Reform and Rural Development Program is neither a priority nor agent, thus showing no respect whatsoever to the landless masses of our people. It remains underfunded, fragmented, and politically compromised. It proves that this government continues to fall in resolving the historical land question. The report before Parliament tells us what we already know. The department total budget decreased from 10.4 billion in 2025-2026 financial year to 10.3 billion in 2026-2027 financial year. In real terms, this is a 4.3% decline. A department responsible for reversing one of the greatest injustices in our history comes to this house with less money, less agency, and no credibility whatsoever in the path of land reform and land transformation. House Chairperson, this budget funds offices better than funding land reform. Office accommodation alone receives 693.9 million. How do we explain that to the farm dwellers who still faces eviction? How do we explain that to labor tenants who have waited for decades for the claims to be settled? How do we explain that to communities whose land claims have moved from one file to another, from one promise to another, from one administration to another? Rural Development Program budget is also being weakened. The department increases funding for NARISEC, but reduces rural infrastructure allocation. The target for job creation through rural development initiatives drop from 450 to 300. The number of rural infrastructure projects fall to 33, compared with 63 in 2024-2025 and 175 in 2023-24. What kind of rural development creates fewer jobs and builds fewer projects? Young people in rural areas do not need training that leads to nowhere. They need land, water, road infrastructure, production infrastructure, markets, finance, extension services, and enterprise support. Without these, NARISEC risks becoming a numerous program counting young people trained without providing sustainable employment of ownership. The Office of the Valuer General is also operating with serious instability. The Valuer General post has been vacant since 2019, and the Chief Operating Officer post since 2016. How can we trust the land valuation process when the institution responsible for valuation has been without critical leadership for years? Yet, there are many still crises this budget and reports returns with over so many years with old stories repeating the same excuses and lamentations. The EFF maintains that land reform must never be treated as a side issue. A land reform program run on a spreadsheet cannot deliver justice. Honorable members, this budget does not represent a credible break with colonial and apartheid land ownership patterns. It maintains the status quo while presenting minimal targets as transformation. The land question cannot be postponed. The landlessness cannot be ritualized. The landless cannot eat promises. Rural communities cannot survive on reports with empty promises. We've got to do something. We had the discussions in the portfolio committee meeting last night, which ended badly with the deputy minister refusing to take individual responsibility. As a former ambassador, as a former premier, and currently as a deputy minister of land reform and rural development, wanting to cast responsibility on all of us, even though that we have not been part of the ruling party, we have not been part of the ruling government. We call upon you and the minister, do something. Honorable Mqetama has presented a proposal here for which you need to consider. We've got our numbers, we can do the right thing in the interest of the landless. We can do something that at least when we cast our minds back, we can say to Robert Sobukwe, your sacrifice, your time you spent in prison, your isolation, your persecution was not in vain. The EFF rejects this budget.
The Honorable Mkwangu.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, Honorable Members. The IFP notes the tabling of Budget Vote 42 as a true test of whether national policies will alter the lived experiences and realities of rural communities or merely become a compliance exercises. We welcome the allocation as a vital fiscal mechanism to execute our constitutional imperatives. It provides the means to promote a holistic rural development and restore dignity to our communities. Addressing historical inequalities in land and in land access remains a foundational pillar for building inclusive and modernized agrarian economy. Our focus must look to the to look to the opportunities embedded within the allocation. We commend initiatives to modernize land administration system, particularly the phased implementation of the electronic deeds registration system, which will improve turnaround times and secure land tenure rights. The rollout of the National Rural Youth Service Corps also remains an admirable vehicle for rural youth skills development. Yet, the pace of land reform is almost slower than communities have actually hoped for, creating frustration among those who have actually waited decades for justice. To accelerate this mandate, land must be treated as a clear national priority. However, this portfolio faces declining fiscal support, with funds increasingly directed away from the department's core mandate, that is land redistribution, restitution, and tenure reform. The current land acquisition budget is less than 0.5% of the national budget. Yet land reform is a constitutional priority. The highest level was in 2006 and 2007, when the budget was 1.09% of the national budget. Purchasing land is costly, and the budget remains limited to cover both acquisition and post-settlement support. This dual burden strains implementation capacity and highlights the need for new funding approaches and stronger interdepartmental collaboration. Our institutional capacity remains limited. As we enter the third year of this administration, vital public entities still lack permanent leadership. The Office of the Valuer General is a clear example where key executive positions remain vacant. Without stable leadership, continuity and credibility in valuations suffer, therefore, delaying land delivery. Filling these vacancies urgently will restore confidence and strengthen delivery. Furthermore, resolving funding and leadership constraints will unlock the land reform value chain, correcting fiscal priorities and restoring the land acquisition baseline will provide capital to scale redistribution. Stabilizing executive leadership and securing a permanent valuer general will eliminate valuation backlogs. A simple and well-resourced foundation will accelerate land delivery, clear historical backlogs, and dissolve frustrations. Moving forward, the primary objective...
Thank you, Honourable Member. Your time has now expired.
So the IFP therefore supports budget vote 42.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Van Wyk.
Greetings, House Chair. Greetings to all the honorable members in the House. Greetings to the Honorable Minister of Land Reform and also our DM. I rise on behalf of the Patriotic Alliance on Vote 42. We speak today for the forgotten, the landless, and the excluded. Let us be clear, the injustice of land dispossession did not end with apartheid. It continues today, not in the form of forced removals of the past, but in the form of delayed justice, broken promises, and systemic exclusion from land restitution processes. Up until this day, Families lost their land under the Natives Land Act and subsequent apartheid laws have received neither their land back nor fair compensation. The Restitution Act promised closure. Instead, we have bureaucratic paralysis. The state admits many large claims remained unsettled, but we ask, how many more decades must victims wait? Worse, where the land reform is happening, corruption has taken root. We have witnessed tenders awarded to political connected middlemen, while genuine beneficiaries are sidelined. The Steinkopf title deed process is a textbook example of political interference gone wrong. Instead of following lawful procedures, political meddling delayed and distorted the transfer of land to rightful owners. This is not a reform. This is exclusion of the vulnerable. And then there is a matter of small-scale farmers' support. Budgets have been allocated. Programs have been announced, yet colored small-scale farmers, especially in the Free State, are not being assisted. Like Wayne Fisher, Charles Adams, Zain Jordan, Lizelle Kralsuk and her colleagues, Tabo Molaba, and many others. Honorable House Chair, the PA will not accept these excuses. We will keep the pressure on the department until every person, black, white, colored, Indian, who was wronged by land laws is treated fairly, until corruption is rooted out, and until political interference in land deals is a thing of the past. Furthermore, Chairperson, it is imperative that we tackle the matter of problematic CPAs, many of whom are embroiled in corruption allegations and face community complaints, such as those in Platfontein, Oppermansgronde, Saron, Richtersveld, and numerous other areas across South Africa. As the department, it is incumbent upon you to address these CPAs. We demand to finalize outstanding restitution claims, prosecute corrupt officials, and ensure equal access to farmer support programs. And the land belongs to those who work on it and those from whom it was stolen from. I thank you. We support.
Thank you. The next speaker is Honorable Boshoff.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister and colleagues. There's an Afrikaans expression which I've used in this debate at previous times, and that is that die grondvraag is die grondvraag, meaning the land question is the basic question. Now, this is the essence of politics in South Africa today. And we are trying to sidestep it, we are trying to work around it in some way. We are trying to get a bureaucratic or a pragmatic way around the central political question in South Africa, which is the ownership of land and the recognition of the peoples who live within South Africa. Now, there are several technical questions we can ask about this department. I wrote a few down. How much land is in black hands? We don't really know. How much land is in state hands? We don't really know. Is there some way to compare the size of land in the Karoo and in the Mpumalanga Lowveld? Like we have small stock units or large stock units and not hectares, because a hectare is not an equal unit in terms of economy. How successful are land projects? Are CPAs effective vehicles for communities? How effective are the entities within the department? Is the budget sufficient? Do we believe in a central planning economy or a market economy? is private deeds the final solution to everything? And I just want to say something about title deeds, and that is that it is so economically useful, not because it gives you the right to own the land, it's because it gives you the right to lose the land. Because if you can lose the land, the bank can take it as a security. That's the essence of why banks regard private property as bankable and not communal property. Communal property cannot be lost. You see, what we come to is that there are two different ways, fundamentally different ways, which are not in exclusive relation to each other, but they complement each other, but they are radically different. The one is, land is an economic commodity. Land is something you use to make money on, or to create subsistence for yourself. The other is that land and identity are intertwined with each other. It's basically the same. You cannot be a person or a people, a group, without land associated to you. Now, what happened in 1994 is that the old power elite said, well, let's give you the political power if we can keep all the property that we used to have. And the new power elite said, let's concede a little bit on land, on the property, if we can get the political power, because if we have the political power, in time we can have all the rest too. Now, the problem is that that solution of 1994 had never been a permanent one. From the beginning, it had been a settlement, a compromise, which was the point of the greatest mutual dissatisfaction. We have to settle this. We have to talk to each other, and the essence of that would be the recognition of Afrikaners and other minorities as permanent and not settlers. I thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next speaker will be Honorable Trolip.
Honourable Chairperson, land reform remains one of South Africa's most important constitutional and economic responsibilities. Rural development cannot succeed where land reform is slow, corrupt, poorly administered, unsupported, or disconnected from economic opportunity. The budget cut from 4.6 billion to 3.9 billion is a red flag. This department cannot perform optimally in isolation from the Department of Agriculture. It is conjoined, but it has been separated, and we understand why they had to create some extra posts in the Government of National Unity. Mphathiswa, andizokufundela le report njengabanye. Ndiyathemba uba uyifundile namagosa wakho niyifundile. Thina singu-ActionSA siyayixhasa le report. Hayi kuba niqhube ngeli hlobo niqhuba ngalo. Ndithi makulungiswe, niqhube ngehlobo elifanelekileyo. ActionSA supports meaningful land reform that is lawful, transparent, economically sustainable, and focused on empowerment rather than political patronage and output versus outcomes-based initiatives. Umhlaba wodwa awuyo alpha no omega. Baninzi abantu abanikwe umhlaba ngurhulumente kodwa balambile. Baphela ukuthengisa ucingo, amazinki, imibhobho yokunkcenkceshela nempompo. Phofu zonke izixhoba zokuqhubeka emhlabeni bajike bathi azikho. Kude kuphele yonke into kulomhlaba, kusheke umhlaba oze. Abantu belambile. Nazi ke indawo ezintathu ezidinga inqwalaselo yakho mphathiswa nesebe lakho. Eyokuqala, massive failure in post-settlement support. Government often transfers land without ensuring beneficiaries can actually farm productively. Many emerging farmers lack access to finance, equipment, water, infrastructure, market access, training and extension services. Productive farms collapse because the state abandons beneficiaries after transfer. This is where the partnership with the Department of Agriculture is so important. Phakume ekhaya mphathiswa kukho iifama ezininzi ezithengwe ngurhulumente. Enye ifama igama layo nguMalangskraal. Malangskraal was the most expensive farm sold in Bedford. Akuqhubeki kwanto phaa ngoku, lihlazo. Ugqitha phambi kule nyanga ipheleyo ndibona nalicangci elibotshwe egeyitini. Ecangcini babhale phaa sithengisa iinkuni. Aba bantu baphelele ukuthengisa iinkuni zomga. Akho nento efuywayo phaya, lihlazo. Secondly, dysfunctional state-owned land management. Large amounts of state-owned land remain unused or underutilized. Thousands of beneficiaries still do not have title deeds or secure tenure. Bureaucratic delays trap people in uncertainty and prevent investment. Iskingathi urhulumente wethu ukholwa abantu baxhomekeke kuye akwazi ukubalawula ngendlala. Bashiyeke ngamakhoboka. Enkonkobe kukho amafama batyala ama-orange. Ukusuka ko-1990 ukutshuka namhlanje abanazo ii-title deeds. Nibabopha izandla emva komqolo nina. Corruption and cadre deployment. Land reform projects have repeatedly been undermined by corruption. Umhlaba nezixhobo ukuqhubeka emhlabeni awutyiwa zimpuku. Zityiwa ngabantu abanyolukileyo. Kutheni kunjena? Hayi, masingathandabuza. Masijongeni esipileni. Sithethe inyani ukuba sibona ntoni na. Mandikuxelela uba ndibona ntoni mna. Ndibona iiprojekthi zivuswa, amantshontsho enkuku nehagu ayatyiwa, ugqiba kwabo utya intshontsho, bayichitha ihoko, bayithengise, bathi hayi, balambile. Omnye walapha u-Honorable Mrharha ebezingombe esifubeni umkile ngoku, ebesithi hayi kuyaqhubeka. Kodwa abantu babaleka indlala emakhaya bayohlala ezixekweni zethu.
Siyabulela, Honorable Trolip. Thank you very much. The next speaker will be the Honorable, the Deputy Minister, Mathabata.
Ambassador, yeah. Very right. Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister Nyonso, honorable members, the Minister, Honorable Nyonso, has addressed land reform and land administration, which are directly linked to rural development. My input will therefore focus on rural development in line with my delegations. While rural development is a concurrent function, our department has a clear leadership responsibility. This includes developing overall strategic direction and providing policy coherence, coordination and implementation support, whilst also being directly involved in implementation through our department's rural development programs. Our responsibility matters because rural underdevelopment in South Africa is not accidental or was not accidental. It has its foundations, or should I say its foundations were laid systematically through colonization and apartheid, or what you could call colonization of a special type. The racial exclusion and discrimination that underpinned and further produced further produced by both sustained racialized rural underdevelopment. It is precisely because of the stubborn legacy of rural underdevelopment that South Africa needs coherent rural development pursued as a national priority. A prosperous South Africa cannot be secured while millions of our people in rural areas have not fully realized the elimination of the centuries-old rural underdevelopment. Rural development is therefore not only about improving conditions in villages and in small towns. It is about correcting historical injustice and systematically eliminating uneven development to level the playing field. It is about ensuring that where a person is born does not determine the limits of his future or their future. Therefore, our department continues to implement the integrated rural development sector strategy. This strategy provides a coherent or a comprehensive and multi-sectoral framework for transforming rural communities. It recognizes that rural development cannot be achieved through isolation or isolated interventions. The strategy requires coordinated action across government, across sectors, and with communities themselves at the center. Work has also begun on a national rural development policy and rural development bill. These instruments are intended to strengthen the long-term legislative and policy foundation for rural transformation. The work was significantly advanced during the National Rural Development Indaba, held in Mangaung earlier this month. This confirmed a broad national consensus. Rural development must move higher on the country's development agenda. Over the medium term, the Rural Development Program is allocated 2,658,502,000 rands. This allocation represents 8.3% of the department's total budget. In the 2026-2027 financial year, the Rural Development Program receives 723,383,000 rands. This allocation will support rural infrastructure projects, rural youth skills development initiatives linked to work opportunities, rural technology research and development, and rural development coordination. So our development will be targeted. In the 2026-2027 financial year, the Rural Infrastructure Development Program is allocated 378,179,000 rands. In 2027-2028, the allocation for Rural Infrastructure Development Sub-Program rises to 596,658,000 rands. In 2028-2029, it rises to 622,529,000 rands. Over the medium term, the department has therefore planned to complete rural infrastructure projects with an estimated value of approximately 1.6 billion rands to improve economic and social development conditions in rural communities. This will cover infrastructure such as roads, bridges, irrigation systems, digital access, and community facilities. The Rural Infrastructure Development Sub-Program is expected to contribute to economic and social development in rural areas, among others, through cooperative and small, medium, micro enterprise, targeting and in line with the district development model. This is also part of rural industrialization as a rural development imperative to transform rural areas from mere sites of extraction and primary production to centers of high value addition. In the 2026-2027 financial year, the National Rural Youth Service Corps, NARISEC, sub-program is allocated 291,514,000 rand. This allocation will support the skills development of rural youth, including 1,227 young people to employment or linking them to employment or small enterprise development opportunities. In 2026-2027 financial year, the Technology Research and Development Sub-Program received 33,050,000 rands. And this allocation will include 5 rural schools in the department's Rural Technology Research and Development Partnership with Department of Basic Education and CSIR. In the same financial year, Rural Development Coordination is allocated 20,640,000 rands. Honorable members, the challenge before us is clear. We must move from fragmented rural intervention to integrated rural transformation. We must move from rural poverty to rural productivity. We must move from inherited inequality to shared prosperity. The department accepts this responsibility. The resolution of the rural development in Daba are being translated now into program of action. That will be the program of action that will be implemented by the government in partnership with multi-sectoral stakeholders and communities. We will continue to build rural development leadership to coordinate and to drive implementation in line with our constitutional and developmental mandate. When rural communities thrive, South Africa thrives. When rural families prosper, national prosperity advances. When the country is transformed, the democratic promise of freedom becomes more real for all. And indeed, the people shall share in this country's wealth. I thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be the Honorable Tring from the virtual platform.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. In welcoming the opportunity to engage on this budget vote, the ACDP notes the some 9.6 billion rand allocation to the Department of Land Reform and Rural Development for the 26-27 financial year. Now, while this figure appears substantial, the Portfolio Committee's May 2026 report reveals that core land reform and restitution budgets have been cut, undermining the very mandate of this department. Recent revelations from the SIU are deeply troubling. It has found that some 650 million rand in irregular matters, with 68 officials facing disciplinary action and 611 cases referred to the National Prosecuting Authority. These scandals erode public trust and weaken the financial health of our economy, as funds meant for justice and restitution are diverted through corruption and maladministration. The committee further highlighted 8,000 unresolved labor tenant cases and persistent capacity failures, vacancies, acting posts, and delayed systems. These failures mean that land redistribution targets remain far below national goals, perpetuating inequality and slowing rural economic growth. The ACDP has consistently argued that land reform must be just, transparent, and economically sustainable. Without strong oversight and efficient delivery, rural communities remain trapped in poverty, and our broader economy suffers from instability in land ownership and agricultural productivity. The ACDP, as kingdom builders, calls for some urgent corrective measures. Firstly, stronger funding for restitution. Secondly, tighter oversight of departmental spending. And thirdly, swift appointments to fill critical vacancies. We position that only then can land reform serve both justice and economic health. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Ghana.
Nakenza mthomasitulu Minister Nakenza bazobuya nayo abafana Saturday eMbombela once and always. Minister, South Africa, as we know, does not have a land shortage problem. What we do have is an urban residential land problem. That is where the real pressure sits. The greatest demand for land today in South Africa is in our cities and towns, where millions of South Africans are searching for land for residential purposes, for dignity, for a place to call home. And until we confront that honestly, we will continue to misunderstand the frustration around the pace of land reform, redistribution, and restitution. Because when people cannot access land closer to economic opportunity, transport, schools, and work, anger grows. The land question is no longer about ownership, it is about access, development, and opportunity. At the same time, Minister, there remains a serious challenge around agricultural land in rural South Africa. The painful truth is that there's still a significant amount of arable land that is either underutilized or not used productively at all. Some of that land, as you'll know, came through the redistribution and restitution processes. Yet communities still do not feel empowered as true economic participants. Land reform cannot end with a title deed a ceremonial opportunity. Land reform, Minister, must create productive farmers, sustainable rural economies, and thriving communities. Because land alone is just not enough. When land does not have roads, it is in isolation. Land without the markets produces poverty, and land without infrastructure is actually abandonment. And we can agree, Minister, that land without water is not very useful. If this budget is to mean anything to the people in our villages and farming communities, then the rural infrastructure development funding must prioritize key infrastructure, especially water infrastructure, because once water arrives, development follows. People can farm, small businesses can emerge, livestock can survive. Food security can also improve. Water is the foundation upon which rural economic development stands. I come from a village myself, El Farah village. I have seen how decisions taken over many years collapsed local agricultural activity, especially through the neglect of the water systems and the rural infrastructure. We know we cannot change yesterday, but we can decide what we do today. We must use this budget to change the narrative around this department. Rural development cannot remain an afterthought while urban centers continue to absorb people fleeing underdevelopment in rural areas. Saturday,
ActionSA, Honorable Ghana. The next speaker will be the Deputy Minister of Social Development, Honorable Hendricks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Sani Bonani. Al-Jamaa supports this budget, although this department continues to fail farm dwellers and labor tenants. There are 1 million of them that are soon to be evicted. Just in one court in Paarl, there are nearly 500 cases by farmers who wants to evict labor tenants. We cannot ignore the calls for expropriation without compensation. We cannot ignore it. But Al-Jamaa concerned about the evictions. I said 1 million labor tenants are soon to be evicted. We have a different approach. House Chair, you know that farm dwellers live on a small portion of a very big farm. Thousands of hectares, and they may live just on 1,000 or 2,000 square meters. So what is Al-Jamaa's approach? All over the country. And a practical example is the Nantes farm in Paarl. That portion of the land that the farm dwellers are working on must be expropriated without compensation. We feel that is a good start. It is not going to harm the farmers because they own thousands of hectares of land, and here we're only asking, let's say, for 1,000 square meters or 2,000 square meters, where people have lived on this land, and it is ancestral land. One of the other concerns that we have is that labor laws are used to evict farm dwellers and labor tenants. The department must ensure the due legal protection and security of the tenure of labor tenants with ancestral linkages to the land, as well as those with long periods of service on the land, along with their families. As the law stands, a material breach of a labor contract between a labor tenant and a farmer will entitle the farmer to cancel the contract, and the labor tenant will lose his right to live in his home on the farm immediately. In terms of the present legislation, when a farmer sells a farming business, they only have to keep them for a year, and after that put new conditions of employment. Retrenchment positions have been slipped in to allow them to be evicted. So the department needs to look at the labor laws which harm labor tenants. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable the Dr. Mahlatsi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Khotso, Africa. The report on budget vote 42 under the Land Reform and Rural Development admits institutional instability, undercapacitation, high vacancy rates, weak monitoring system, and poor coordination. Yet we are presented with an ambitious of 200,000 hectares, rural infrastructure, youth training, digitization, and modern land administration. But here is a contradiction. Program 3, Land Reform and Restitution, the core of land justice, is cut by 375 million in real terms, while administration and planning budget increases. Money is moving away from land reform while paperwork increases. This incapacity does not occur in vacuum. It enabled by the Portfolio Committee of Land Reform that failed to exercise consequences management and oversight. Instead of holding officials and executive accountable, it became the spectators while the land reform is sabotaged. Through these budgets that do not even translate into deliveries. The SIU has already pointed to officials implicated in undermining the land reform. The committee report confirmed the same symptoms: weak system, delays, poor data, litigation backlogs, and department that cannot translate plan into delivery. Our people are hungry, but barona balapile, and the land remain one of the most powerful tools for their survival and dignity. The departments must therefore ensure that the people are not only given land, but enabled to use it productively so that they can feed themselves, sustain their households, and take full control of their food production system. When the UAT speak of the land, we do not refer narrowly to the agricultural land alone, but to the full spectrum of natural wealth. This includes our minerals beneath our soil, our mountains, our rivers above it. Our people must derive tangible benefit from all these resources as part of comprehensive and inclusive model economic justice and shared prosperity. The UAT, reject vote 42. Cut ni mambo.
Thank you. The next speaker will be the Honorable Nana.
Looks like the Progressive Caucus is regrouping. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, Minister, Deputy Minister, honorable members, and everybody else in the House. I'm about to deliver an indictment on a democratic state. It is the year 1886. A sprawling, racially integrated and cosmopolitan settlement has just been established on the west bank of the Buffalo River near East London city center, known today as Gugombo City. Soon after this establishment, KwaNongqongqo, the West Bank village, it grew into a strong, vibrant, peaceful, and multicultural society. Then the Nationalist Party won elections in 1948, and it introduced the ideology of separate development, more commonly known as apartheid. In 1958, the Minister of Native Affairs, Dr. H.F. Verwoerd, decided to break up this well-established community and forcibly removed them to make way for an industrial area where the city's Mercedes-Benz factory was ultimately built. A new dormitory township was subsequently built some 30 kilometers from East London to be developed in a Bantu homeland of Ciskei. This made it possible to relocate all African families living in East London, including those who were living in the West Bank village. In 1965, approximately 7,000 families were relocated from KwaNongqongqo under the Bantu Administration Act of 1945 and the Group Areas Act of 1950. African families were moved to Mtanzane, whilst colored families were moved to Buffalo Flats. Harrowing stories are told by those who lived to tell the tale. Open quote. We won't forget that day. It was terrible. We cried whilst our houses were pulled down. Close quote. One displaced person said. Open quote. I have great fears about the place I have been forced to go to, and people fear the move to Mtanzane, close quote. Another displaced person recalled. From a functioning township and community with schools, churches, and community structures, they were removed to Mtanzane, a place lacking social infrastructure, unfriendly, dark, and marked by great economic hardships, with work opportunities very far away. But with the advent of a democratic dispensation in 1994, a new sense of hope emerged among the displaced families of KwaNongqongqo, that their dignity would finally be restored. Following the approval of the Restitution of Land Rights Act of 1994, the Nongqongqo Committee submitted a land claim in 1998 for their land. The committee unanimously voted for the land-based compensation, choosing to rebuild their community near West Bank in East London rather than monetary compensation. At the signing of the settlement agreement with the government on 16 April 2000, the chairperson of the KwaNongqongqo Committee, Mr. Bentamo, underscored the sense of their hope, open quote, with the community united behind this desire and with the support of the City Council, the prospects now look good for a positive outcome, close quotes. However, that day, that joy, hope, and trust in the new government once resulted in total despair, as it was in 1965. Now, 26 years later, all they have is land, which is still not provided with services, most of it taken over by land invaders, and they have no hope of ever getting compensation for what they were promised. Their dream of rebuilding a community is currently shattered. Minister.
Honorable Nana, my apologies. Can you please take a seat? What's that, Honorable Mahlatsi?
Thank you, Chairperson. I just want to check if the honorable member can take a question.
Honorable Nana, are you prepared to take a question?
Yeah, you see, smaller parties, Chairperson, get 3 minutes.
Are you willing to take a question? Thank you. He's not willing to take a question. Can you proceed?
Smaller parties have 3 minutes, so he's trying to make use of my time. Gaba, it is disheartening, Mdagwetu, to note that natural attrition is taking its toll on the first generation claimants, KwaNongqongqo, who have never realized their dream of living in West Bank in a community as they knew it. Honorable members, the claimants of KwaNongqongqo are watching today's proceedings on TVs across the country. The claimants have knocked on so many doors, minister after minister, mayor after mayor in Buffalo City, with limited or no success at all. They have now resorted to us in Parliament as their last hope. We dare not fail them. The claimants can be assured that the Democratic Alliance will not rest, retreat, or relent until the KwaNongqongqo settlement agreement is fully, fairly, and completely implemented. Honorable Chairperson, I wish to thank Durban City for silencing pirates last week, and I know Orbit will do the same, and I want to thank them in advance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Ndalani.
Honorable House Chairperson, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, honorable members. Let me start with on the opposition, the way they were adopting the budget. Minister and the Deputy Minister, there's nothing we can do with the people who comes with good ideas. At the same time, they reject the report, they reject the budget vote, they reject everything. At the end of the day, the ANC, yeah, in this budget, you win. I stand before this august house to deliver an address on the fundamental pillar of our democratic transformation, land reform. We are at a critical juncture in our nation's history where the unresolved question of land remains a visible scare on our socio-economic landscape. It acts as the anchor for inclusive economic growth and the cornerstone of the national reconciliation. We cannot achieve true freedom when the primary asset of production remains skewed by a colonial and apartheid disposition. Our historical mandate requires us to expedite land redistribution and restitution. At the same time, we must ensure that the productive use of acquired land for commercial viability to secure food production and stimulate rural economies. To build the capacity, ethical and developmental state that our citizens demand, the ANC-led GNU must aggressively pursue the key strategic delivery objective, which includes 200 hectares of land for equitable access and secure tenure option. Rural economic stimulus, expanding rural infrastructure project to generate at least 2,250 direct jobs within vulnerable communities. To realize this objective, the department must expedite the progressive legislation, particularly equitable access of land bill, to formalize a just redistribution framework. Furthermore, the government must intensify and capitalize their post-settlement land development support program. Through the Land Development Support Program, the state provides coordinated technical, infrastructural, and market facilitation support. This guarantees that land remains highly productive immediately following its transfer. True land justice requires that we secure the tenure of those who live and work on the land. We must immediately improve and strengthen the farm workers' equity schemes to deliver the life-changing benefit to farm laborers, reshaping historical production relations in the meaningful way. The department must move with speed to claims and protect rural dwellers against illegal eviction. This will achieve by fully executing the Master on Labor Tenants implementation plan for the definitive settlement of outstanding application. Honorable Minister, it is critically important to restore stable governance and strict financial accountability within the Ingonyama Trust Board and all related entities to protect the rights of traditional communities. To those who claim that land reform threaten economic stability. The ANC record of delivery offers definitive evidence to the contrary. To date, the democratic state has acquired over 9.2 million hectares of production land across the length and breadth of our country. Successful projects are providing that equitable redress and economic growth can coexist seamlessly. These projects include the eco-tourist model, Somkanda Game Reserve, reclaimed by the Gumbi community under the Restitution of Land Rights Act 22. This project showcases how conservation can drive local economies. By dedicating the majority of the restored land and biodiversity, the community established a Big Five reserve that attract global tourists and sustain hundreds of community led jobs. The agricultural training model, Mawela and Bilabila CPAs, meaning managing over 5,000 hectares of livestock and eco-tourist property. These communal property associations demonstrate the power of post-settlement support. Through financial management, coaching, and structured agricultural extension, these beneficiaries are actively running commercial operation and a 10-chalet bush lot. The strategic joint venture model, Mamo CPA, based on the Bernard Shabangu farm, this initiative utilizes high-impact joint venture climate partnered with technical experts to certain commercial export networks. The project protects national food security while delivering reliable monthly dividends to households and funding local educational initiatives. House Chairperson, land reform is not a choice between justice and economic stability. It is the unified path to achieve both by retaining the land and providing comprehensive support. We safeguard our food security, create employment, and restore human dignity. A primary constraint to the pace of our land reform program has always been fiscal availability. We cannot rely solely on the constrained national budget to finance the massive scale of restitution, acquisition, and post-settlement support that our people require. We must look at innovative, sustainable financial models. To this end, we must urgently open a serious nationwide consideration for the implementation of the targeted agricultural land taxation system. A progressive land tax will serve a dual strategic purpose. Firstly, it serves to discourage land speculation. It penalizes owners who either cultivate the land or release it to the market. Secondly, the revenue generated directly from the agricultural tax must be ring-fenced to fund land acquisition, infrastructure development, and comprehensive technical support for emerging farmers. By utilizing fiscal policy instruments like land taxation, we ensure that agricultural poverty contributes directly to our own transformation, driving both equity and productivity without draining the central fiscus. As I conclude, our Honorable House Chair, let us fulfill the constitutional promise to build a truly non-racial, just and
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable members, I'm informed that the Deputy Minister left 1 minute 42 seconds, and therefore the Minister will have 5 minutes and 42 seconds. The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Masendi qala ngawe Honorable Mngxitama. Uthi uPresident Ramaphosa udlale ngePAC. Wayinika le department. You see, the difference between President Ramaphosa and your president, President Zuma, is that President Ramaphosa gave this department to PAC, when your president in 2009 gave it to Freedom Front Plus. And namhlanje uthi abantu be Freedom Front Plus zii-settlers. That's the problem with you. Allow me first to thank honorable members for their contributions to this debate. The debate reflects that despite our differences, there is a broad agreement across this House that the land question remains central to the future of South Africa and that rural development cannot be postponed any further. Honorable Mkhaga, we appreciate your support for this budget vote and your emphasis on rural infrastructure, post-settlement support, and rural industrialization. Those matters remain central to our program of action. Honorable Mngxitama, I hear your concern on the pace of land reform. We share the view that more must be done. The challenge before all of us is how we strengthen the program further, because rejecting this budget vote alone will not place one additional hectare in the hands of our people. What will assist is stronger capacity, better systems, and more support for the land reform program itself. Honorable Maseko and Honorable Nana, your concerns regarding restitution, post-settlement support, and implementation are noted. Restitution cannot end with land on paper. It must result in serviced land, secure tenure, infrastructure support, and real community restoration. We accept that land reform cannot succeed if beneficiaries are left without infrastructure, water access, production support, markets, and practical support. Kodwa Jola, funa uwazi mahluko phakathi kwe-land budget ne-Durban seat. Honorable Matthias, the figures before this House show clearly that the greater share of the budget supports direct service delivery. More than 80% of this budget supports implementation programs. Approximately 63% supports land reform programs, with further allocation for rural development and land administration, which remain foundational to implementation and delivery. Honorable Mwango, welcome the IFP's support for this budget vote and reaffirm your point regarding NARISEC. This program remains one of the department's important instruments for rural youth development, combining leadership, practical skills, and pathways into work or enterprise. We're also moving to fill critical posts that affect delivery capability. Honorable Van Wyk, May my second, you know we handed over land in Rechtersveld. We're going to resolve the problem of that CPA. If they are not complying, we're going to dissolve them. Why? So the title deeds and CPA stability are important. Through the transformation of certain Rural Areas Act, the state land continues to move into community control, while the department continues strengthening CPA governance, compliance, and sustainability. Honorable Boshoff, in your absence, you want to know how much land is in black hands and state land. You forgot to tell us how much land is in white hands. How did they get that land? What happened to those people who were in that land when that land was usurped from them? Honorable Tring, corruption, weak oversight, and critical vacancies undermine public confidence in land reform. The department is therefore strengthening consequence management, oversight system and institutional capacity so that delivery improves and public trust is restored. Honorable Matlati, we may differ on certain matters, but the people of South Africa expect all of us to contribute towards strengthening implementation and improving outcomes. Land reform cannot succeed through permanent disagreement alone. It must also be supported by practical solutions, capable institutions, and accountable governance. Honorable Ghana, my chief whip, your contribution correctly reminds this House that the land question is not only rural. Urban land hunger remains one of the major realities. Honorable Hendricks, we note your concerns. We'll resolve the Nantis issue. We were there. Honorable Trolip, sizawamba sobabini sibheke ngapha eBedford kuba sesiqalisile ukukhupha i-title deeds more than 80 sesizishwishile eFree State. Sizawuzisa naseBedford apho usuka khona. Sizayibona la fama izawuyeka uthengisa inkuni, izawucreate ukutya, izawupheza uthengisa inkuni. House Chairperson, despite the challenges raised in this debate, the budget vote reflects a department that continued to work under difficult conditions to advance land reform, restitution, and rural development. Honorable Chair, apha endlini si-invite i-AFASA, sa-invite izwi labantu, zonke eza farmers bezikhalazela i-title deeds, sikhona apha zindwendwe zethu zizongqina uba siqalisile ukhupha i-title deeds. Enyanisweni le nto yomhlaba naniyive ngathi nonke ngapha siyi-PAC naningapha kwi-ANC nathi nawubona ityhu inde ngapha nawelela ngapha nakhonkotha ngapha.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Honorable members, that concludes the debate and the business of this mini plenary session. The mini plenary will now rise.
Recording.